This story is about a guy, his name is Shingo Ichinomiya, lonely, ugly loser stuck in his dull office job. One day, everything changed in his life when he reincarnates as a noble in the world of sword and magic. He faced so many big challenges, but he has a dreams to becoming the strongest magician in the land. In the beginning of the episode, our hero boy standing alone in the middle of a wasteland. A dreadlocked man with a spade is looking at him aggressively. The boy focuses with a magical object in his right hand and releases a magical beam that destroys the stones and rocks in front of him, leveling the land. After this, the people standing behind him cheer and get to work digging the land. The boy's name is Vale and he watches his men plow the land with a spade and remove the broken stones. Another boy comes up to him and praises his magical abilities. Even the staff cannot believe that the Count's magic is actually being used to improve the land. Vale smiles and gets ready to go home, but his butler, Roderick, asks him for more help in clearing the land. A few hours later, a tired Vale finally returns home. A group of girls happily welcome him home and have tea with him. They joke about how Roderick is making them work like slaves. Vale thinks he is already used to it because of his white-collar job, but the girls don't understand what that means. He goes back to his room and sighs in frustration. 10 years ago, Shingo was a normal office worker who moved into his apartment alone and cooked for himself. One night, when he was about to eat a late-night dinner, he suddenly found himself in front of a completely different meal. Then he saw an unknown face on a plate, staring at him. He turned into a child in a different world. There were sounds of congratulations and joy outside, and it seemed as if he was part of a grand wedding ceremony. Musicians were playing their instruments enthusiastically, and everything was dazzling with the grandeur of the ceremony. Vale, a man who had now woken up as a young child, was confused at first. He thought he was probably abroad, but when he heard everyone talking in Japanese, he was convinced that he was somewhere else. He guessed he was probably in a dream, but this experience seemed very realistic. He tried to touch the food placed in front of him and it felt real. Vale closed his eyes to wake up from his dream, but a voice told him to wake up. An elderly man told him to get up so he could introduce himself to everyone. Vale saw that the man was leading him to a group of guests. When he got there, another older boy greeted him and introduced him. The boy's name was Eric and he introduced Vale as his younger brother, Wendelin von Benno Baumeister, called Vale for short. Eric sat down beside Vale and asked him, "Did your mind go blank before?" Vale thought and tried to get information out of Eric. Since Vale was now only a 5-year-old child, Eric began to explain everything to him. Eric explained that today was the wedding of his eldest brother Kurt. Kurt was marrying Amelie, the second daughter of Sir Mainbach. The father of the family had been having difficulty finding a suitable wife for his heir, so he was relieved that the daughter of a nobleman had decided to marry into their family. Vale also learned that his family was actually part of the nobility. Vale was having difficulty dealing with his new situation, but he was at least grateful that he could automatically understand language and read the words written on signs. He thought that if he could guess from the lavish ceremony, their family was probably very wealthy. And if he was the third son, that meant he wouldn't have to worry about working or going hungry. Vale picked up his fork and went back to enjoying the feast. But the next day, Vale had a strange feeling when the breakfast served in front of him felt very different and wrong. Hard bread and soup that tasted like water. His family members were enjoying their meals as usual, but Vale noticed that the environment around them had changed a bit. The wallpaper was peeling, the paintings on the walls were fading and the wooden pieces on the table were barely holding on. When Vale's brother returned home from fishing, Vale asked him about the family's situation. They had a great party last night, but why do they look so poor now? Eric explained that when guests come over, they have to show off and not look stingy. In reality, they are quite poor. Last night the broken walls were covered with curtains and the food served was a special menu. But now, they live on dry bread and watery soup every day. Vale could not understand this. He is still the third son of the noble family, so he should have some special privileges. Meanwhile, Eric introduced Vale to another brother, Helmut, who was out hunting. 2 other young men, Paul and Hermann, also joined their conversation. Eric also explained that his 2 other brothers were unable to attend the wedding. It seems that their parents had too much fun in the bedroom. Vale then tried to study his new surroundings. They were in Helmut's kingdom, whose capital is Stuttgart, where 1 million citizens live. To the south is the Dukedom of Bleichroder, and even further south is the Baumeister-Neitdom, where they live. It's an extremely rural area, where only 800 people live, and Vale is the 8th son of the noble family. Vale was sad about his new life, but then he saw his 3 brothers say goodbye to their mother. He runs to them and asks them what's going on, to which Eric tells him that they are indeed leaving. They are finding it difficult to divide their lands, so they are going to start a new life in the capital and leave the nobility. Eric pats Vale on the head and advises him to learn some skills already and stop acting stupid. Vale sadly says goodbye to his brothers and goes to his family library to prepare for the future. There, all the books Vale finds are either books of poetry or love stories. When he was returning the books to the shelf, he accidentally dropped a box. The box contained a piece of paper and a crystal ball. The paper said that the crystal ball was a magical ability crystal that could measure someone's magical ability. The paper said that only 1 person in 1,000 has the ability to do magic. Vale already felt hopeless, but he decided to go ahead. The paper also said that magic is not hereditary, anyone can have the ability to become a great wizard, and the crystal can help figure out if you can be one of them. Vale didn't believe he would be so lucky to have magical ability, but he thought it was worth a try. Vale put the crystal ball on the desk and tried to put his mind into it. However, nothing happened. It was just as Vale expected, so he wasn't really disappointed. But suddenly, the crystal ball began to glow and filled with white light. Back at the castle, Vale was still surprised that the crystal ball actually responded. Vale read the paper again and tried to understand what it meant. According to the text, if the crystal ball glows like a rainbow, it means that he has a high aptitude for magic. Thus, the user is advised to learn magic through special guides. Vale started searching for guidebooks, but he only found Nobel, travel guides, and random poetry books. The magic books were nowhere to be found. His father went to the library to look for books for Vale. Vale asked his father if he had any other books, but his father believed that Vale was not really able to read. In the forest, Vale tried to perform magic through a wand, but he was not successful. Filled with sadness, he fell to the ground. Suddenly, a voice started speaking to him. This voice belonged to a long-haired man who was floating in the sky. The man was happy that he had finally found someone with the same wavelength as him. He knelt down in front of Vale and asked his name, but Vale trembled with fear and tried to scare him with his wand. The man apologized for scaring him and gently let go of the wand. He explained to Vale that he was a wizard. Meanwhile, the wand dropped by the man fell down from a nearby cliff and accidentally knocked down a huge stone. The man and Vale looked down from the cliff and saw that the stone had actually fallen on a huge wild boar. The boar moved the stone and looked over the cliff. Thinking they were trying to kill him, the boar ran towards the cliff. The boar let out a shrill roar and Vale tried to run away. However, the man suddenly grabs Vale and prevents him from running away. He pulls Vale back and points Vale's hand towards the boar. He then urges Vale to visualize his air magic. Vale yells, but the man begins to explain that he must first imagine his mana circulating throughout his body. Both begin to glow in green light. Vale was still trembling in fear as the boar ran towards them, but eventually his magic works and air comes out of his hand, causing the boar to retreat. The boar was still angry, but this time, the man used his magic to push him away. He then introduces himself as the former court wizard of the Bleichroder Dukedom, Alfred Rainsford. Back home, Vale was disappointed with his everyday food. At dinner, they drank tea, which was so thin it was just water. In contrast, the tea with Alfred was wonderful. After the encounter with the boar, Alfred told Val over a cup of tea that he wanted to pass on his magic to him. Val wanted to know why, when he couldn't even pay for it, but Alfred just wanted a disciple. Before training began, Alfred warned Val that he must keep his magic a secret. The next day, the first training session involved matching abilities, which meant that Val would be able to match his mental power with someone whose power was greater than his. The two held each other's hands and began to transfer minds through their bodies. When Val sensed Alfred's psychic energy, he was shocked, while Alfred congratulated him. Alfred was worried that Vale would not be able to reach his level of psychic ability, as such abilities are set at birth. But Vale had surpassed even his own abilities and was still not fully developed. Returning home, Vale's father was looking at the crystal ball in the family library. He was wondering why the crystal ball moved from its previous position. His successor, Kurt, laughed at Vale and speculated that Vale might have been frustrated by his lack of magic talent. Meanwhile, Vale was indeed practicing his fire magic. Alfred praised his progress, even though he had only practiced for a few days. He also brought a basket of mountain vegetables, so that Vale could continue the illusion that he was working in the forest. At night, Vale's family praised the abundance of his vegetables. But Kurt was outraged when his father asked Val where he got the special vegetable, which only grows on the other side of the river. Did Val cross the river using magic? Kurt laughed at the ridiculousness of it. A few days later, Val and Alfred were flying in the sky and Val was practicing tracking magic. Val felt the vibrations and topography of the ground below, and when he found his target, he threw a powerful wind-driven stone at it. Then they roasted the bird and both of them shared it. Val also had a bottle of spicy wasabi, which he gave to Alfred. Alfred did not notice the wasabi's pungency. While enjoying the food, Alfred warned Val not to go too far into the forest, as there were still many monsters there that were far beyond Val's level. Kurt was following Val in the forest and secretly monitoring him. Alfred thinks Kurt has realized Val's magical abilities and is worried about his position as heir. Val really doesn't like being a lord, it feels like a pain to him, and he doesn't want to bring trouble to his siblings. On the other hand, he has no concrete plans for the future. Alfred suggests that Val could try adventuring, which piques Val's interest. He closes his eyes and thinks about his future. Meanwhile, a purple aura suddenly appears on Alfred's arm. Alfred holds it in his hand to hide it from Val and succeeds, pushing the aura back and begging for time. During dinner, Val tells his family about his plans to go adventuring. His older brothers are happy with the news, but his father says that they don't have enough money to enroll Val in the Adventurers Academy. At the next training session, Alfred shows Val the city of Breachburg, where the Adventurers Academy is located. It is a trading city, and everyone can join merchant guilds. Val sees that he can make money by joining a guild and selling items, but first he must learn how to travel there. One way to travel is to use flying magic, and Alfred picks Val up in his arms and flies with her before soaring high into the sky. That night, Alfred has to fight his dark curse again. The next day, while Val is practicing her flying magic, Alfred tells her that this is their last training session. Val tries to stop him, as they have only trained together for 2 weeks, but Alfred ignores her. At dinner, Val's father tells her that a whispering dead has been seen in the forest. It is a dead creature that looks like a human and can even talk to people, but it is already a corpse and cannot feel pain. In a few years, this creature will lose its consciousness and turn into a zombie. Val suddenly remembers that Alfred used to feel cold to the touch and that he easily ate spicy wasabi. Worried about his master, Val flies into the dark forest to find Alfred. Val warns Alfred about the dead in the forest and tries to take him with them, but Alfred admits that he is actually the Whispering Dead. 5 years ago, he was searching for medicine with Duke when they were attacked by demons. Duke tried to retreat while Alfred fought them off. Eventually, Alfred died of exhaustion, but he still had one wish left: to advance his knowledge of magic. When he felt Vale's presence, he was happy that he could fulfill his wish. Val has to pass his final test. Alfred begins teaching Vale the use of sacred magic. When Vale begins to cast the spell, the darkness around Alfred begins to fade and he screams in pain. Still, he begs Vale to continue. Vale's eyes begin to tear up as he does not want to say goodbye to his mentor, but Alfred tells him to remember everything he taught him. Vale bows, thanks Alfred, and finally releases him from his dead state. Alfred smiles in relief, slowly fades into the light, and gives Vale advice on how he should live his life. Vale screams in the night with his pain and suffering, but then he wipes away the tears and smiles. He promises to follow his teacher's last words. A few years later, Vale says goodbye to his mother and leaves home to fulfill his adventure dreams. The sounds of students debating are echoing in the Adventurer Academy. In one classroom, the newly enrolled students are introducing themselves. A girl with blue hair introduces herself as Louise, while a girl with pink hair introduces herself as Ina. After Vale introduces himself, their teacher gives them papers to fill out, which is a group task. They have to form a party with the other students. During dinner, Vale feels lonely because no one is willing to sit next to him. A blonde boy named Hada explains that Vale's magical power is so great that even the instructor has given up teaching him. If someone is able to form a party with him, his whole academy life will be easier. This is why everyone already looks down on Vale and is afraid of him. Thankfully, Erwin already has a plan. He believes that Vale is always lonely because he is busy evaluating others. If they form a team, with Erwin being the best swordsman, Louis being the best martial artist, and Ina being the best spearman, they can convince Vale to join their team. Meanwhile, Val doesn't know what the others think of him. He decides to distribute spices to make friends, but his plans are interrupted when a group of students argue loudly with Erwin's team. They announce that Val will be joining their group, the X Trio, and not Erwin's team. Val has no idea about this, and he sees that everyone else is already close to each other, which makes him feel sad and withdrawn. In the next class, the teacher tells them to go hunting. Val is excited to party, but quickly sees that all the students are divided into their own groups. Louise wonders if they should invite Val, but Erwin stops her, fearing that haste might disappoint Val. A few hours later, the students present their hunt to the instructor. Erwin's team has caught 3 whole pigs and are very confident. When Val comes in, he takes out the magic bag Alfred gave him and begins to bring out various animals. Soon, his table is full. Seeing his power, the X Trio abandons the idea of including Val in their party because he is out of their league. Seeing this, the others leave. Excited by his success, Val was about to invite everyone for a meal, but when he turns back, no one is there. At night, Erwin confides his sorrow to the girls. Since they are not the oldest children, they are often neglected. When they awakened their powers, they became even more powerful than the family, causing their parents and siblings to distance themselves from them out of embarrassment. They are upset that their dreams are being crushed just because they were born late. They decide not to give up and force Val to give them their identities. The next day, Erwin and the girls go deeper into the forest, but they are immediately surrounded by wolves. Thankfully, Vale is hunting nearby and discovers their position with his tracking magic. If he can save them, he can be their friend, so he quickly arrives on the scene. Erwin, Louise, and Ina do their best to fight off the wolves, but their greater numbers are proving to be too much for them. Erwin is injured and more wolves attack them, but Vale eventually arrives. With a spell, rock spikes quickly fill the area, pushing the wolves back and protecting the people inside. Afterwards, they apologize to Vale for bothering them and explain that they just wanted to recognize him. Vale is seen looking a bit confused, but the others admit that Vale's magic is actually S rank, and that he is in a completely different world. For this reason, they give up on the idea of partying. Vale tries to stop them, but their instructor comes in and happily announces that the Duke has invited them to the